So after 5 years abroad, a woman returned to her home. Initially, the residence was overrun by dense vegetation. Upon closer inspection, she noticed something strange about the place. Mysterious plants and animals would change the course of the entire city. Before hearing this intriguing story, remember to subscribe to the channel. The sound of the key turning in the lock echoed through the vine-covered porch. Eleanor hesitated for a moment, her hand trembling slightly as she pushed the heavy wooden door. The creak of the rusted hinges broke the silence that hung over the property, announcing her return after 5 long years. As she crossed the threshold, Eleanor was met with a sight that made her heart ache. The house that had once been her refuge, her welcoming home, was now almost unrecognizable. Spiderwebs hung from the ceiling like ghostly curtains, while a thin layer of dust covered the furniture like a gray shroud. The smell of mold and abandonment filled the air, making her cough lightly. Walking slowly through the living room, her footsteps echoed on the wooden floor. Through the foggy windows, she could see the once meticulously tended garden, now completely overtaken by wild vegetation. Weeds had taken over the flower beds, choking the roses her mother had loved so much. Eleanor felt a pang of guilt. How could she have let things get to this point? The decision to go abroad 5 years ago had seemed so right at the time, a unique opportunity for personal and professional growth. But now, faced with the tangible consequences of her absence, she wondered if the price had been too high. Taking a deep breath, Eleanor opened the dusty curtains, allowing the afternoon sunlight to flood the room. It was then that she noticed something strange. Amidst the chaos of the overgrown garden, there were spots of vibrant color that didn't seem to belong in that scene of neglect. Intrigued, Eleanor stepped out into the garden, having to push her way through the tall weeds that reached her waist. As she approached, her eyes widened in astonishment. There, amidst the weeds, bloomed flowers of extraordinary beauty, with petals of such vibrant colors that they seemed almost unreal. "This is incredible," she murmured to herself, kneeling to examine a particularly fascinating flower more closely. Its petals had a shade of blue that Eleanor had never seen before, with silver veins that seemed to pulse softly. As she watched in wonder, a movement at the corner of her vision made her turn her head. To her surprise, a small deer stood at the edge of the garden, its curious eyes fixed on her. Eleanor froze, afraid of startling the animal, but to her amazement, the deer took a few hesitant steps toward her. "Hello, little one," Eleanor whispered gently. The deer tilted its head as if listening intently. For a magical moment, Eleanor felt an inexplicable connection with the animal and the nature around her. The moment was interrupted by the sound of an approaching car. The deer quickly disappeared into the vegetation, leaving Eleanor with a sense of loss. Standing up, she saw a van parking in front of the house. Out of it stepped a middle-aged man with a friendly smile. "Miss Eleanor, I'm Charles, from the cleaning and restoration company you hired," he introduced himself, extending his hand. Eleanor greeted him, feeling relieved to no longer be alone in this seemingly impossible task. "Thank you for coming, Charles. As you can see, we have a lot of work ahead." Charles nodded, looking around with a mix of concern and determination. "Don't worry, Miss Eleanor. I've seen worse cases. Let's bring this house back to life." As Charles and his team began unloading equipment, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of hope. Perhaps she thought this wasn't just a restoration task, but the beginning of something new and unexpected. The following days were a whirlwind of activity. Charles's team worked tirelessly, cleaning, pruning, repairing. Eleanor joined them whenever possible, determined to actively participate in the resurrection of her home. As layers of dirt and neglect were removed, Eleanor began to rediscover the hidden beauty of her house. Each cleaned room, each restored patch of the garden brought forth long-forgotten memories. It was during the cleaning of the attic that Eleanor made an intriguing discovery. Hidden behind a pile of dusty boxes, she found an old chest she didn't remember seeing before. Carefully, she opened the creaking lid, revealing its contents: a collection of yellowed documents, old photographs, and a leather-bound diary. Sitting on the dusty floor, Eleanor began to flip through the diary. It belonged to her great-grandmother, Mary, a woman she knew only through family stories. The pages were filled with elegant handwriting, recounting tales from a long-gone era. As she read, Eleanor became increasingly fascinated. Mary wrote about her family's deep connection to the land, about rituals and traditions that honored the cycles of nature. She spoke of plants with mysterious properties and an almost magical harmony with the animals of the region. "The animals speak to us," one passage said, "if only we know how to listen. They know the secrets of the earth and the sky, foresee storms and the changing of the seasons. They are our guardians and teachers." Eleanor felt a shiver run down her spine as she read those words. She remembered the deer in the garden, the strange sense of connection she had felt. Could it be possible that there was more truth in these ancient beliefs than she had ever imagined? Lost in her thoughts, Eleanor barely noticed the passing hours. When she finally descended from the attic, carrying the precious chest, the sun was already setting, casting golden shadows over the partially restored garden. It was then that she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. The strange flowers she had noticed earlier now emitted a soft, almost ethereal glow in the twilight. It was as if the garden had come to life, pulsing with a mysterious energy. At that moment, Eleanor knew her journey was just beginning. The restoration of her home was more than a renovation project. It was the awakening of something ancient and powerful, a legacy she was only beginning to understand. As the sky darkened and the stars began to dot the heavens, Eleanor remained in the garden, surrounded by the gentle glow of the mysterious flowers. For the first time in years, she felt truly at home, connected not only to her family history, but to something greater, deeper, and infinitely more mysterious. Dawn brought a new energy to Eleanor's property. The air seemed to vibrate with possibilities, and even the restoration crew noticed the subtle change in the atmosphere. Eleanor, invigorated by the discovery of her great-grandmother's diary, threw herself into the work with renewed enthusiasm. As she supervised the garden cleanup, Eleanor couldn't take her eyes off the glowing flowers that had captured her attention the day before. In the sunlight, they seemed almost normal, but there was something about their vibrant colors and the way their petals moved in the breeze that set them apart from any plant she had ever seen. "Charles," she called, waving to the head of the cleanup crew. "Have you ever seen flowers like these before?" Charles approached, furrowing his brow as he examined the plants. "No, Miss Eleanor, I've never seen anything like them. They're different, aren't they?" Eleanor nodded, feeling a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Yes, they are. And look, they seem to be spreading." Indeed, upon closer inspection, small sprouts of the same plants could be seen emerging in different spots around the garden, as if they were slowly reclaiming the territory. "Maybe we should call a botanist," suggested Charles, scratching his head. "It could be some invasive species." Eleanor hesitated. Part of her wanted to keep the discovery a secret, at least for now. "Let's wait a bit," she finally said. "I want to observe them more before making any decisions." Throughout the day, Eleanor divided her time between overseeing the restoration work and studying her great-grandmother's diary. The yellowed pages revealed a fascinating story of connection to the land and animals, filled with ancient rituals and knowledge that had been forgotten over the generations. One passage in particular caught her attention. "The moonflowers bloom only for those whose hearts are open to the secrets of nature. They are the eyes of the earth, watchful and wise. Where they grow, animals find refuge, and the spirits of the forest dance." Eleanor felt a shiver run down her spine. Could the strange flowers in her garden be the legendary moonflowers mentioned by her great-grandmother? Her thoughts were interrupted by a shout from the garden. Running outside, Eleanor found one of the workers pointing to the sky with a look of astonishment. On the horizon, dark clouds were gathering rapidly, promising a violent storm. But that wasn't what had caught everyone's attention. A flock of birds, larger than any Eleanor had ever seen, was flying in perfectly synchronized formation toward the property. "My God," murmured Charles, joining Eleanor. "I've never seen so many birds together like this." The flock arrived at the property, circling over the garden several times before beginning to land. To everyone's astonishment, the birds, a mix of species that wouldn't normally associate, seemed perfectly at ease with each other and with the humans present. Eleanor watched in awe as the birds settled into the trees and shrubs, many choosing the vibrant plants as perches. The garden, which had been quiet just moments before, was now filled with chirps and warbles. "They seem like they're preparing for something," commented one of the workers, nervously glancing at the darkening sky. As if to confirm his words, a distant thunderclap echoed, startling everyone. The storm was approaching quickly. "Everyone inside!" shouted Charles, taking charge of the situation. "Let's take shelter until the storm passes." As the team rushed to the safety of the house, Eleanor stayed in the garden for a moment longer, watching the birds. They seemed calm, almost expectant, as if they knew exactly what was coming. A movement at the edge of the garden caught her attention. To her surprise, the same deer she had seen the day before was there, now accompanied by other animals, foxes, rabbits, and even a badger. They all seemed to have sought refuge on the property, guided by some mysterious instinct. The rain began to fall, first in scattered drops, then in heavy sheets. Eleanor finally ran inside, her mind spinning with the implications of what she had just witnessed. From the living room window, she watched the storm unleash its full fury. Lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the garden in dramatic flashes. And with each flash, Eleanor could see the animals still and sheltered, as if the property were an island of calm amidst the chaos of the storm. Hours passed, and the storm finally began to subside. As the last thunderclaps echoed in the distance, Eleanor stepped back into the garden, marveling at what she found. The garden, far from being devastated by the storm, seemed more vibrant than ever. The bright flowers had multiplied, now covering large areas with their soft glow. The animals, still present, moved peacefully among the plants as if they were at home. "It's incredible," said Charles, joining her. "It's as if the storm had blessed the garden in some way." Eleanor nodded silently, her mind drifting back to the words in her great-grandmother's diary. There was much more to this property, to this family legacy, than she could have ever imagined. That night, after the restoration team had left, Eleanor sat on the restored porch watching the garden bathed in moonlight. The flowers shone more intensely under the silver light, creating an ethereal spectacle. As she contemplated the scene, Eleanor felt a deep sense of purpose settling in her heart. She had returned to this house thinking only of restoring it, but now she realized that her destiny was much greater. This place, with its mysterious plants and its inexplicable attraction to animals, was more than just a property. It was a sanctuary, a point of connection between the world of humans and the realm of nature. And somehow, Eleanor knew that she had been chosen to be its guardian. With that realization came the awareness that her journey was only just beginning. There would be challenges ahead, secrets to uncover, and perhaps even dangers to face. But there, under the starry sky, surrounded by the soft glow of the moonlit flowers and the gentle murmur of sleeping animals, Eleanor felt ready to embrace her destiny. The following weeks brought a peculiar routine to Eleanor's life. During the day, she continued overseeing the restoration of the house, which was progressing rapidly thanks to the dedicated work of Charles and his team. At night, however, Eleanor devoted herself to a much more mysterious project, unraveling the secrets contained in her great-grandmother Mary's diary. Sitting in her newly restored library, Eleanor spent hours poring over the yellowed pages, trying to decipher the riddles and obscure references her ancestor had left behind. The diary spoke of ancient rituals, a deep connection to the land and its cycles, and a nearly forgotten knowledge about the magical properties of certain plants. One night, while studying a particularly intriguing passage about the lunar flowers, Eleanor heard a soft sound coming from the garden. Curious, she approached the window and was left speechless by what she saw. The glowing flowers, which now covered much of the garden, were emitting a pulsating light as if they were breathing. And, to her astonishment, she saw that animals of various species had gathered around the plants, as if participating in some kind of nocturnal ritual. Fascinated, Eleanor quietly stepped out into the garden, approaching cautiously so as not to startle the animals. To her surprise, none of them seemed to mind her presence. A deer, which she recognized as the same one she had seen on her first night back, even approached her, its large, expressive eyes fixed on hers. "What is happening here?" Eleanor whispered, more to herself than to the animals. As if in response, the deer tilted its head slightly toward the lunar flowers. Eleanor followed its gaze and noticed something she hadn't seen before. Among the flowers, small crystalline fruits were sprouting, glowing with the same ethereal light as the flowers. Guided by an impulse she couldn't explain, Eleanor reached out and picked one of the fruits. It was surprisingly light and cold to the touch, as if made of ice, though it didn't melt in her hand. At that moment, a passage from her great-grandmother's diary echoed in her mind. The fruit of the lunar flower is a rare gift, granted only to the true guardians of the earth. It opens the eyes to the invisible and the heart to ancient wisdom. With her heart racing, Eleanor brought the fruit to her lips and took a bite. The flavor was indescribable, sweet and bitter at the same time, with notes of something wild and ancient that she couldn't name. The moment she swallowed, the world around her seemed to change. The colors became more vivid, the sounds sharper, and, to her astonishment, she began to hear voices. Not human voices, but a cacophony of whispers, chirps, and low growls that somehow she could understand. They were the voices of the animals around her. The deer, the foxes, the birds perched in the trees, all were communicating in a language that now inexplicably made sense to her. "Welcome, Guardian," said the deer, its deep, melodious voice echoing in Eleanor's mind. "We have long awaited your arrival." Eleanor staggered, stunned by the revelation. I can understand you?" A rabbit approached, its whiskers twitching with excitement. "The lunar fruit has opened your senses to our speech. You are the new guardian, as your great-grandmother was before you." "Guardian?" Eleanor repeated, feeling both awestruck and overwhelmed. "Guardian of what?" An owl landed on a nearby branch, its amber eyes glowing in the darkness. "Of this sanctuary, of course, this place where the veil between worlds is thin, where the magic of nature flows freely." The implications of what she was hearing made Eleanor's head spin. She sat down on the soft grass, surrounded by animals she now recognized not just as creatures, but as sentient beings with their own thoughts and wisdom. "But why me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. "What am I supposed to do?" The deer stepped closer, gently touching Eleanor's shoulder with its muzzle. "You carry the blood of the ancient guardians, and as for what you must do, you must protect this place, nurture the connection between the realms and help restore the balance that has been lost." Eleanor fell silent for a moment, absorbing everything. Part of her wanted to believe this was just a strange dream, but the clarity of her perceptions and the tangibility of the world around her were undeniable. "How can I do this?" she finally asked. "There's so much I don't know, so much I don't understand." The owl let out a soft hoot, which Eleanor interpreted as a gentle laugh. "You will learn, Guardian. The knowledge is in your blood, in the words of your ancestors, and in the wisdom of the land itself. We will guide you." As the night deepened, Eleanor remained in the garden, listening to the stories and teachings of the animals. They spoke of the cycles of nature, the threats the natural world faced, and the crucial importance of places like this sanctuary. When the first rays of sunlight began to tinge the horizon, Eleanor stood up, feeling transformed. The world around her seemed new, full of possibilities and magic she had never noticed before. Returning to the house, she paused on the porch and looked out at the garden. The moonflowers had closed their petals with the arrival of daylight, but Eleanor could feel their energy pulsing beneath the surface. The animals had dispersed, returning to their hiding places in the nearby forest, but she knew they would never truly be far away. With a deep sigh, Eleanor stepped inside, her mind spinning with all she had learned. She knew her life would never be the same. The path ahead was uncertain and likely full of challenges, but also wonders beyond her imagination. As she prepared for another day of restoring the house, Eleanor smiled to herself. The house was no longer just a renovation project. It was the heart of something much greater, a portal between worlds that she now had the responsibility to protect and nurture. The sound of approaching cars announced the arrival of Charles's team. Eleanor took a deep breath, knowing she would have to navigate carefully between her new duties as the guardian and the appearance of normality she needed to maintain. The days that followed were a delicate balancing act for Eleanor. During the day, she continued to oversee the restoration of the house, maintaining a facade of normalcy in front of Charles and his team. At night, however, she immersed herself in her new role as the guardian, exploring the limits of her newly discovered abilities and learning more about the hidden world she could now perceive. One afternoon, while reviewing some details of the restoration with Charles, Eleanor noticed something strange. One of the workers, a man named Andrew, seemed particularly interested in the lunar flowers that now covered much of the garden. "Miss Eleanor," Charles called her attention, "Andrew here is an amateur botanist. He's fascinated by these unusual plants in your garden. He thinks they might be a new species." Eleanor felt a chill in her stomach. She knew she couldn't reveal the true nature of the lunar flowers, but she also didn't want to arouse suspicion. "Really?" she replied, trying to sound casual. "They are fascinating, aren't they?" "They appeared after I started cleaning up the garden." Andrew stepped closer, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "I've never seen anything like them, Miss Eleanor. The structure of the petals, the coloration, they're unique. I'd like to take some samples to study if you'd allow it." Panic grew in Eleanor's chest. She instinctively knew she couldn't let the lunar flowers be studied in a lab. "Oh, you know what, Andrew? I prefer to keep the garden intact for now. I'm liking how it's turning out naturally." Andrew seemed disappointed but nodded respectfully. "I understand, Mrs. Eleanor. But if you change your mind—" Of course, Eleanor gently interrupted him. "You'll be the first to know." After the team left, Eleanor walked through the garden, her heart still racing from the near incident. She knew she needed to be more careful. The world wasn't ready for the secrets her garden held. That night, as the stars began to dot the sky, Eleanor sat among the moonflowers, which now glowed softly in the darkness. Almost immediately, she felt the presence of the animals approaching. The deer, whom Eleanor had started calling Guardian in her mind, was the first to approach. "Something troubles you, Guardian," he said, not as a question, but as a statement. Eleanor sighed. "Yes, one of the workers noticed the flowers. He's a botanist and wants to study them. I fear this might bring unwanted attention to this place." The owl, perched on a nearby branch, let out a soft hoot. Humans have always been curious. It's in their nature to want to understand, classify, study. But some secrets shouldn't be revealed before their time. "What should I do?" Eleanor asked, feeling the weight of her responsibility. A fox, its red fur gleaming in the light of the flowers, approached. "Perhaps it is time to expand the circle of protection, Guardian. Not all humans are ready to see, but some may be chosen to help." Eleanor pondered the fox's words. She had felt the loneliness of carrying this secret alone. The idea of sharing this responsibility, even with a few chosen individuals, was tempting. "How will I know who to choose?" she asked. The Guardian inclined his majestic head. "Trust your instincts, Guardian. The lunar flowers will guide you. Those who are worthy will be drawn to this place, just as you were." In the days that followed, Eleanor watched the people around her closely, looking for signs of who might be trustworthy. She noticed that some people seemed naturally drawn to the lunar flowers, while others barely noticed them. It was during one of these observations that Eleanor noticed something surprising. Martha, Charles's young assistant, often stopped to admire the flowers when she thought no one was looking. More than that, Eleanor swore she had seen the flowers react to Martha's presence, glowing a little more brightly. Determined to investigate, Eleanor invited Martha for tea one afternoon after the rest of the team had left. "Martha," Eleanor began cautiously, "I noticed that you seem to really enjoy the flowers in the garden." The young woman blushed slightly. "Ah, yes, Mrs. Eleanor, they are so beautiful. I've never seen anything like them before." Eleanor studied Martha's face, searching for signs that she could be trusted. There was a sincerity in her eyes, a genuine connection to nature that Eleanor recognized. Making a sudden decision, Eleanor stood up. "Come with me, Martha. There's something I want to show you." Leading the young woman to the garden, Eleanor stopped in front of a particularly vibrant group of moonflowers. The sun was setting and the first stars were beginning to appear in the sky. "Watch," Eleanor instructed softly. As darkness fell, the flowers began to emit their gentle glow. Martha gasped, her eyes wide with wonder. They're glowing," she whispered, amazed. Eleanor smiled, feeling she'd made the right choice. "Yes, Martha. And there's much more to see, if you're willing." That night, Eleanor shared the secrets of the garden with Martha. She told her about her role as the guardian, about communicating with the animals, and about the importance of protecting this sanctuary. To her surprise and relief, Martha accepted it all with a mix of awe and determination. "I've always felt there was something special about this place," she confessed. "Can I help, Mrs. Eleanor? I want to be part of this." Eleanor felt a wave of gratitude and hope. Yes, Martha. I think this is why you were guided here. Together we can protect this place and, who knows, help restore the balance between the human world and the natural world. As the two women talked, planning and dreaming under the soft glow of the moonflowers, Eleanor felt a weight lifted from her shoulders. She was no longer alone in her mission. Weeks turned into months, and Eleanor's property flourished not only in beauty but in purpose. With Martha as her confidant and apprentice, Eleanor found a new balance in her life as the guardian. Together, they worked to keep the sanctuary protected while learning more about the secrets of nature and the legacy left by Eleanor's great-grandmother. One autumn morning, as Eleanor and Martha walked through the garden, discussing the day's plans, an unexpected sound caught their attention. It was the noise of an engine, followed by the screech of tires on the dirt road leading to the property. "Are we expecting someone?" Martha asked, furrowing her brow. Eleanor shook her head, feeling a twinge of concern. "Not that I know of. Let's see who it is." They headed to the entrance of the property, arriving just in time to see an official government car park. A man in a suit stepped out of the vehicle, his face serious as he surveyed the area. "Good morning," he said, approaching the two women. "I'm looking for Eleanor Silvera." "I am Dr. Richard Mendez, from the Ministry of the Environment." Eleanor stepped forward, trying to remain calm. "That's me. How can I assist you, Dr. Mendez?" The man pulled an envelope from the inside pocket of his jacket. "Ms. Silvera, I am here to inform you that your property has been designated as an area of ecological interest. We have received reports of rare species of flora and fauna in this region, and we need to conduct a thorough investigation." Eleanor's heart raced. She exchanged a quick glance with Martha, who looked equally alarmed. "I see," Eleanor said, trying to buy time. "And what exactly would this investigation entail?" Dr. Mendez flipped through some papers. "Well, to start, we will need to conduct a complete survey of the property's flora and fauna. This will include collecting samples, taking photographs, and possibly installing cameras to monitor wildlife." Eleanor felt a knot form in her stomach. If the government discovered the true nature of the moonflowers and the animals that inhabited the sanctuary, all would be lost. She needed to think fast. "Dr. Mendez," she began, choosing her words carefully, "I appreciate the ministry's concern for environmental preservation. Indeed, I have been working hard to restore this property and protect its unique ecosystem. Perhaps we can discuss a way to collaborate that doesn't disturb the delicate balance we've managed to establish here." The government official seemed to consider her words. "I understand your concern, Mrs. Silvera, but you must understand that we have protocols to follow." At that moment, as if sensing the tension in the air, the deer that Eleanor called Guardian emerged from the forest, calmly walking toward the group. Dr. Mendez was stunned, clearly surprised by the presence of the majestic animal so close to humans. "Impressive," he murmured. "I've never seen a deer so at ease near people." Eleanor saw an opportunity. "Dr. Mendez, what you're seeing is the result of years of careful work to create an environment where animals feel safe. An invasive investigation could disrupt this delicate balance." As she spoke, Eleanor felt a sudden inspiration. It was risky, but she knew she had to act. "Why don't we take a walk around the property? I can show you the work we've done and discuss how we can collaborate in a way that benefits both the ministry's research and the preservation of this sanctuary." Dr. Mendez hesitated for a moment, but the curiosity evident in his eyes betrayed his interest. "Very well, Mrs. Silvera. Let's show what you have here." Eleanor guided Dr. Mendez through the garden, with Martha following closely. As they walked, Eleanor spoke passionately about conservation efforts, the restoration of natural habitats, and the importance of non-invasive approaches to studying wildlife. When they approached the moonflowers, which at that time of day looked like ordinary, though extraordinarily beautiful, flowers, Eleanor paused. She knew she was about to take a great risk, but she felt she had no choice. "Dr. Mendez," she said softly, "there is something special I would like to show you, something that explains why this place is so unique and why it needs to be protected in a very special way." The government official looked at her curiously. "What is it, Mrs. Silvera?" Eleanor took a deep breath. "It's something that can only be seen at dusk. I know I'm asking a lot, But would it be possible for you to stay until then? I promise it will be worth it. Dr. Mendez seemed intrigued and a bit skeptical, but after a moment of reflection he agreed. Very well, Mrs. Silvera, you've piqued my curiosity. The hours that followed were tense. Eleanor and Martha took turns keeping Dr. Mendez occupied, showing him different aspects of the property and discussing conservation strategies. The entire time, Eleanor prayed that she was making the right decision. Finally, the sun began to set. Eleanor guided Dr. Mendez back to the garden, her heart pounding in her chest. When they approached the moonflowers, she gestured for him to wait. As darkness fell, the flowers began to emit their soft, ethereal glow. The garden came alive with a light that seemed to come from another world. Dr. Mendez was speechless, his eyes wide with astonishment. "This is extraordinary," he whispered. "I've never seen anything like this in my entire career." It was at that moment that the animals began to appear. The guardian deer, foxes, rabbits, and even some nocturnal birds, all gathering peacefully around the glowing flowers. Eleanor watched Dr. Mendez's face, seeing in it a mix of awe, reverence, and growing understanding. She knew she was witnessing a moment of transformation. "Dr. Mendez," she said softly, "now you can see why this place needs to be protected in a very special way. It's not something that can be studied in a lab or captured in reports. It is a magic that needs to be preserved, protected, and respected." The government employee fell silent for a long moment, absorbing the scene before him. When he finally spoke, his voice was filled with emotion. "Mrs. Silvera, I think we need to completely rethink our approach here. What you have, what you've created, is something truly unique and precious." That night, under the soft glow of the moonflowers, Eleanor, Martha, and Dr. Mendez talked at length. They discussed ways to legally protect the sanctuary without exposing its secrets, strategies to study its unique ecosystem in non-invasive ways, and the possibility of using the property as a model for new conservation approaches. When Dr. Mendez finally left, it was late at night. He departed with a new light in his eyes and a promise to work with Eleanor to protect the sanctuary. Eleanor and Martha stayed in the garden for a while after he left, feeling exhausted but triumphant. They had faced a significant threat and emerged victorious, not through conflict, but through the magic of nature itself. "I think we've gained a new ally," Martha said, smiling. Eleanor nodded, feeling a wave of gratitude and hope. "Yes, and perhaps something even greater. Maybe we've taken the first step in showing the world the true magic of nature." The months following Dr. Mendez's visit brought significant changes to Eleanor's sanctuary. With the discreet but powerful support of the Ministry of the Environment, the property was officially designated as a special preservation area, protected from external development and invasive research. Eleanor, Martha, and a small team of carefully selected conservationists worked tirelessly to maintain the delicate balance of the unique ecosystem. Dr. Mendez, now a valuable ally, made regular visits, always amazed by the discoveries each visit brought. One spring afternoon, as Eleanor walked through the garden with the guardian, the majestic deer that had become her closest confidant among the animals, she noticed something unusual. The lunar flowers, typically calm during the day, seemed restless, their petals fluttering softly even in the absence of wind. "Something is changing," the guardian spoke in her mind. "The land is preparing." Eleanor furrowed her brow, intrigued. "Preparing for what?" Before the deer could respond, Martha came running down the path, her face a mix of excitement and concern. "Eleanor, you need to see this." Following Martha to the edge of the property, Eleanor was shocked by what she saw. A line of trees marking the boundary of their land was moving. Not dramatically or frighteningly, but slowly and deliberately, their roots uncoiling from the soil and their branches stretching as if awakening from a long sleep. "This is impossible," Eleanor murmured, though she had already learned that the word impossible held little meaning in this magical place. The guardian, who had followed them, spoke again. "It is not impossible, guardian. It is the awakening. The sanctuary is growing." In the days that followed, Eleanor and her team watched in awe as the phenomenon continued. The trees at the edge of the property slowly advanced, creating new green spaces. Lunar flowers sprouted spontaneously in areas that were once just ordinary grass, And most astonishing of all, animals of species never before seen in the region began to appear, as if drawn by a silent call. The news spread quickly. Dr. Mendez arrived with a team of scientists, all sworn to secrecy but desperate to understand what was happening. Journalists began to hover nearby, drawn by rumors of inexplicable events. Eleanor knew she had to act quickly to protect the expanding sanctuary. On a night of the full moon, she gathered her team, Dr. Mendez, and the animal leaders, the guardian, the wise owl, the cunning fox, and others, for an urgent council. "The sanctuary is growing," Eleanor began, her voice heavy with emotion. "But with growth comes danger. More people are noticing. How can we protect this sacred place?" The discussion that followed was long and heated. Ideas were proposed and discarded. Tension grew as the group struggled to find a solution. It was then that a soft, melodious voice was heard, surprising everyone. It was a young girl, no more than 12 years old, whom no one had noticed joining the group. Her hair was the deep green of forest leaves, and her eyes shone with the same ethereal light as the moonflowers. "The sanctuary doesn't need to be hidden," she said, her voice carrying a wisdom beyond her apparent years. "It needs to be shared." A stunned silence fell over the group. Eleanor was the first to recover. Who are you?" The girl smiled, a smile that seemed to contain all the beauty and mystery of nature. "I am Arya, the spirit of this place. I was born from the magic you nurtured here, from the love and care you dedicated to this land." Arya looked at each member of the group before continuing. "The world out there is hungry for magic, for a connection with nature. The sanctuary is growing because it is time to heal the divide between the human world and the natural world. But this can only happen if we allow others to experience the magic of this place." Arya's words sparked a wave of heated discussion. Some feared that opening the sanctuary to the outside world would destroy it. Others saw the wisdom in the words of the forest spirit. Eleanor remained silent for a long time, pondering. Finally she spoke. "Arya is right. We cannot keep this place hidden forever, but we also cannot simply open the gates and expect everyone to understand and respect the magic here." She paused, looking at each face around her. "What we need is a plan, a way to introduce people to the magic of this place gradually, to teach them to respect and protect nature." In the days that followed, a plan began to take shape. The sanctuary would be open to the public, but in a controlled manner. Small groups would be guided along carefully planned paths, learning about the importance of conservation and experiencing carefully measured doses of the place's magic. The most powerful moonflowers and the most sacred rituals would remain hidden, protected by Arya and the animal guardians. But there would be special moments during the full moon or at equinoxes and solstices when chosen visitors would be invited to witness the true magic of the sanctuary. As the plan developed, Eleanor felt a mix of anxiety and hope. She knew they were about to embark on a journey that could change not only the sanctuary, but the entire world. One night, as she watched the lunar flowers glow under the stars, Eleanor felt a presence beside her. It was Arya, her eyes shining with the same light as the flowers. "You're doing the right thing, Guardian," the young spirit said softly. "The path ahead won't be easy, but it's necessary. The world needs to relearn the magic of nature, and this place will be the catalyst for that change." Eleanor nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also the excitement of the possibilities unfolding before her. "We're ready," she said, her voice steady with determination. As the two stood there side by side, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying promises of change and hope. The sanctuary continued to grow, its boundaries expanding not only physically, but also in the hearts and minds of those who would soon come to experience its magic. The day of the sanctuary's grand opening dawned clear and fresh, a promising omen for what was to come. Eleanor woke before sunrise, her heart pounding with a mix of anticipation and apprehension. She stepped out into the garden, where the lunar flowers were dimming their nighttime glow, as if preparing for the historic day ahead. "Are we ready?" Eleanor asked softly, more to herself than to anyone else. "As ready as we can be," came Arya's gentle voice. The young forest spirit emerged from the shadows, her green hair swaying softly in the morning breeze. The sanctuary is eager, but also excited. It feels it's time to share its magic. In the months leading up to this day, Eleanor and her team had worked tirelessly. Carefully planned paths had been created through the sanctuary, designed to showcase its beauty and magic without disturbing its most sensitive inhabitants. Guides had been trained, not only in ecological facts but also in the subtle art of helping visitors open their hearts and minds to the magic of nature. Onosambo. Mendes had used his influence to ensure that the sanctuary was officially recognized as a unique conservation area, with strict rules on the number of visitors allowed and the types of activities that could be conducted. As the sun rose on the horizon, the first visitors began to arrive. They were a diverse group, families with excited children, college students with curious eyes, and elderly individuals with serene expressions of anticipation. Each of them had been carefully selected and prepared for this first visit. Eleanor, along with Martha and the other guides, began leading small groups through the sanctuary. They showed the exotic flowers, explained the delicate ecological balances, and shared stories about the importance of conservation. But more than that, they encouraged the visitors to simply experience the place, to feel the unique energy that pulsed through the land, to observe the animals moving with unusual confidence around humans. For most visitors, it was a deeply moving experience. Many left with tears in their eyes, speaking of a sense of connection with nature they had never felt before. Others stood in reverent silence, as if they had witnessed something beyond words. But not everything went perfectly smoothly. A small group of skeptics insisted on questioning everything, demanding scientific explanations for phenomena that defied conventional logic. A journalist, who had somehow infiltrated the group, constantly tried to stray from the designated path, eager to uncover the true secrets of the sanctuary. It was during one of these escape attempts that the incident occurred, nearly threatening the entire project. The journalist, dodging his group, stumbled into a particularly sensitive area of the sanctuary where some of the most powerful moonflowers grew. In his fall, he crushed several of the precious plants. The effect was immediate and dramatic. A silent scream seemed to echo through the sanctuary. The animals, until then calm and friendly, suddenly vanished into the forest. The sky, once clear, darkened with ominous clouds. Eleanor, sensing the disturbance, rushed to the scene. She found the journalist fallen, surrounded by the damaged lunar flowers. Her heart tightened at the sight of the destruction. "What have you done?" she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Before the journalist could respond, Arya appeared. Her eyes, usually gentle, now shone with a fierce intensity. "You have wounded the heart of the sanctuary," she said, her voice carrying the weight of ages. "Now you must make amends." The journalist, pale and trembling, looked from Eleanor to Arya. I'm sorry," he stammered. "I didn't know. I didn't understand." Eleanor felt a wave of compassion mixed with deep sadness. "No one truly understands," she said softly. "That's why we are trying to teach, to show. But some secrets are too sacred to be revealed before the world is ready." Arya knelt beside the damaged flowers, her hands hovering over them. A soft light emanated from her fingers, flowing into the wounded plants. Slowly, miraculously, the flowers began to rise again. "The sanctuary can heal," Arya said, "but it needs help. It needs belief, care, love." Inspired, Eleanor turned to the journalist. "You wanted a story, here it is. Not a story of hidden secrets or conspiracies, but the story of a place that needs protection, understanding. A story about reconnecting with the magic of nature that we have all lost." The journalist looked at Eleanor, at Arya, at the flowers slowly coming back to life. Something in his eyes changed. The skeptical disbelief giving way to a look of wonder and growing understanding. I will tell this story," he finally said, "the true story. About the importance of protecting places like this, about the magic that still exists in the world if only we know where to look." At that moment, as if responding to a shift in energy, the sky began to clear. The animals slowly reappeared, cautiously eyeing the gathered group. The moonflowers, fully recovered, seemed to glow with an inner light, even under the afternoon sun. Eleanor took a deep breath, feeling that a crisis had been averted, but also that something important had been achieved. The sanctuary had faced its first major challenge and emerged stronger. As she guided the journalist back to the main group, Eleanor reflected on the day. It had been a tumultuous but promising start. The world was beginning to awaken to the magic of nature, one heart at a time. And as the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the sanctuary, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would still be challenging, but she knew she wasn't alone. With Arya, the animals, her dedicated team, and now a growing number of human allies, she was ready to face whatever the future held. The months following the sanctuary's opening were a whirlwind of activity and change. The journalist's story, published in a major media outlet, had a far greater impact than Eleanor could have imagined. The article, a moving piece about reconnecting with nature and the importance of preservation, captured the public's imagination and sparked a wave of interest in the sanctuary. Requests for visits increased exponentially, forcing Eleanor and her team to implement a lottery system to select visitors. Each group that passed through the sanctuary left transformed, spreading the message of conservation and respect for nature. However, with growing fame came new challenges. Special interest groups began pushing for unrestricted access to the sanctuary. Scientists from around the world begged for permission to conduct studies on the unique plants and animals. And more troubling, rumors about the miraculous properties of the moonflowers began to spread, attracting the attention of less scrupulous individuals and corporations. It was on a particularly hectic afternoon that Eleanor received an unexpected visit. She was in the garden, discussing with Martha how to handle the latest group of researchers insisting on unrestricted access to the sanctuary, when Arya appeared, her usually serene face marked by lines of worry. "Guardian," Arya said, her voice filled with urgency, "we have a problem. The balance is being disrupted." Eleanor felt her heart tighten. "What's happening, Arya?" The spirit of the forest gestured for them to follow her. As they walked deeper into the sanctuary, Eleanor began to notice subtle signs that something was wrong. The colors of the plants seemed slightly faded, the bird's song had an almost melancholic tone, and there was a palpable tension in the air. Finally, they reached a hidden clearing where the oldest and most powerful moonflowers grew. Eleanor gasped at the sight before her. Several of the precious plants had been uprooted, leaving empty holes in the soil. "Someone has broken into the sanctuary," Martha whispered, horrified. Arya nodded gravely. "They came during the night. The animal guardians tried to stop them, but these intruders had technology that confused and disoriented them." Eleanor felt a wave of anger and sadness. "Who would do this? Why?" "The lunar flowers are powerful," Arya explained. "There are those who believe they can exploit this power for their own gain. But they don't understand. Uprooting the flowers from their home, from their connection to the earth, is like tearing away a part of the sanctuary's very soul." Eleanor closed her eyes, trying to calm herself and think clearly. When she opened them again, there was determination in her gaze. "We need to find those flowers and bring them back. And we need to strengthen our defenses, so this never happens again." In the days that followed, Eleanor mobilized every resource at her disposal. Dr. Mendez used his government contacts to initiate a discreet investigation. Martha coordinated a team of trusted volunteers to patrol the sanctuary's boundaries. And Eleanor, alongside Arya, worked tirelessly to heal the damage done to the land and the animals affected by the theft. It was during one of these healing sessions that Eleanor had an epiphany. As her hands hovered over the wounded soil where the flowers had been uprooted, she felt a deep connection not only to the sanctuary, but to the entire web of life that extended far beyond its borders. "Arya," she said slowly, "I think I understand now. The sanctuary, it's not just this place, is it?" The forest spirit smiled, a glimmer of approval in her eyes. "You're beginning to see, Guardian. The sanctuary is a focal point, a place where nature's magic is strongest and most visible. But that magic exists everywhere, in every plant, in every animal, in every particle of soil." Eleanor nodded, feeling simultaneously humbled and empowered by this realization. "So our mission isn't just to protect this place, but to help awaken this connection everywhere." "Exactly," Arya agreed. "And that's why the thieves of the moonflowers are doomed to fail. They think they can steal the magic, but the true magic lies in the connection, the balance, the mutual respect among all forms of life." With this new understanding, Eleanor began implementing changes in how the sanctuary operated. Instead of just bringing people in for guided tours, They started offering workshops and retreats that taught people how to recognize and nurture the magic of nature in their own environments. She also launched a Sanctuary Ambassadors program, training selected individuals to bring the sanctuary's lessons back to their communities. These ambassadors learned not only about ecology and conservation, but also about the subtler practices of connecting with nature that Eleanor had learned throughout her journey as the Guardian. Meanwhile, the search for the stolen moonflowers continued. Through a network of contacts that extended far beyond what Eleanor could have imagined, they began tracing the path of the precious plants. It was during this search that Eleanor made a surprising discovery. The moonflowers, even uprooted from their home, had not completely lost their magic. Wherever they had been taken, they were slowly but surely beginning to transform their new environment. Reports of unexplained phenomena and miraculous healings began to emerge from various parts of the world, coinciding with the locations where they suspected the flowers had been taken. They're spreading the sanctuary's magic, Eleanor realized, sharing her discovery with Arya and Martha. Even in adversity, they're fulfilling a greater purpose. Arya smiled, a smile that seemed to hold the wisdom of the ages. Nature always finds a way, Guardian. Sometimes what seems like a loss can be the beginning of something new and wonderful. As the sun set that day, casting a golden glow over the growing sanctuary, Eleanor felt a renewed sense of hope and purpose. The path ahead was still full of challenges, but she knew that each challenge was an opportunity to spread the sanctuary's magic a little further, to touch one more heart, to awaken one more soul to the wonder and importance of nature.